white, black, 2 rooks or castles, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 8 pawns, white, queen, black, circumflex accent IJL *I. The following diagram represents the men arranged in proper order on the board at the commencement of a game. Diagram number 2. Black. The L for /IGMT. //// AW // S. W /// AW / white. XII movements of pieces and mode of capture. As shown above, the board must be so placed that each player must have a white square at his right-hand corner of the board. The players draw by lot for move and choice of color. In all international and public chess matches and tournaments, however, it is the rule for the first player to have the white man. The white queen must always occupy a white square, and the black queen a black one on commencing the game. Scrivat Regina colorum. But the white king must always occupy a black square and the black king a white one, the kings and queens each facing one another. The bishops on each side occupy the squares nearest to the kings and queens, then come the knights, and the rooks are posted in the corner squares. The king, the most important of the pieces, moves only one square at a time backwards, forwards, diagonally and laterally, or he may capture the hostile man in the same way, which means that he may take off any hostile piece or PAWN that stands on any square immediately adjoining his own, and then occupy the vacated square. Once in the game he has the privilege of moving to squares, i.e., when he performs the operation of castling, which is explained under technical terms. He cannot, however, move onto a square next to one occupied by the hostile king, as the opposing monarchs must always be separated from each other by a square. Nor can the king be moved into check, i.e., onto any square commanded by a hostile man. He can, however, capture any unguarded piece or pawn of the enemy on any square next his own in any direction. When the king is so situated that he cannot avoid capture, he is checkmated, and the game is lost. The following diagram illustrates the move of the king. Diagram number 3. The queen is by far most powerful of the pieces, moving or capturing in any direction on an unobstructed iron backwards, forwards, laterally or diagonally, and capturing in movements of pieces and mode of capture. XLLL. The same way. When she occupies any one of the 4 center squares, she commands no less than 27 out of the 64 squares of the board. Diagram illustrating move of the queen. Diagram number 4. The rook is next in importance to the queen. He moves or captures in straight lines along the ranks and files to the extent of the board on an unobstructed range backwards, forwards and laterally, but not diagonally. He has also the privilege, in conjunction with the king, of castling once during the game. Diagram illustrating the move of the rook. Diagram number 5. millimeters. *MS*. In the foregoing diagram, the black rook on queen's 5th square, see chapter II, on notation, commands 14 different squares on a clear range. XIV movements of pieces and mode of capture. The bishop only moves and captures diagonally on squares of his own color, i.e., the black king's bishop can't never move onto a white square, nor the white king's bishop onto a black one. On a clear diagonal, the bishop can be moved from one corner square to the opposite corner. Diagram illustrating the move of the bishop. Diagram number 6. In the above diagram, the black bishop, standing on his queen's 5th square, commands 13 squares on unobstructed diagonals, viz. On his queen's bishop 6th, queen's knight's 7th, queen's rook's 8th, king's 4th, king's bishop's 3rd, king's knight's 2nd, king's rook's square, queen's bishop's 4th, queen's knight's 3rd, queen's rook's 2nd, king's 6th, king's bishop's 7th, and king's knight's 8th squares. The KNIGHT. The knight's move is a peculiar one, as he alone of the pieces has the privilege of leaping over other pieces and pawns, whether of his own or hostile forces. He moves or captures from the square where he stands to any 3rd square of an opposite color to the one from which he started, by skipping one diagonal square and then landing on the next square of the same line or row, or vice versa. The subjoined diagram illustrates. Diagram number 7. \du. The notation X. Here, The black knight, occupying his king's fifth square KS commands no less than 8 squares, viz. King's bishop's third, king's knight's fourth, king's knight's sixth, king's bishop's seventh, queen's seventh, queen's bishop's sixth, queen's bishop's fourth, and queen's third. If any hostile piece or pawn were posted on any of these squares, he could capture it and himself occupy the vacated square, and he could leap over pieces or pawns of either color standing between. In order to do this, the pawn can only move forward 1 square at a time, except at his first move, when he has the choice of advancing 1 or 2 squares, but in the latter case he is sometimes liable to be captured en passant or in passing. See technical terms. He can never command more than 2 squares, and captures diagonally like a bishop, but only on the 2 squares next his own. He, however, alone of all the chessmen has the privilege of promotion, i.e., on reaching an 8th square he may be exchanged either for a queen or any other piece his player may select. The laws of the British Chess Association, which we adopt, provide that his player may refuse his promotion, in which case he remains a pawn as before, but unmovable, and he is termed a dummy pawn. We must, however, state that such a case can only very rarely occur in actual play, and that this law, though in our opinion theoretically sound, has little practical value for playing the game over the board, but may be of importance for the construction of problems. Chapter II. The notation. Each square of the chessboard has a separate and distinctive designation. According to the English, French, Italian and Spanish system CF notation, the different squares are called after the pieces. Thus, the square on which the king stands at the commencement of a game, is styled the king's square, that occupied by the queen's square, and so on. King's bishop square, king's knight's square, king's rook's square, queen's bishop square, queen's knight's square, and queen's rook's square, the pieces on the king's side being termed the king's pieces, and those on the queen's side the queen's. The pawns are named after the pieces to which they belong. Thus, the pawn in front of the king is called the king's pawn, that in front of the queen's pawn, that in front of the king's knight, the king's knight's pawn, and so on. The square immediately in front of the king is called the king's second square, the next in front of that, the king's third square, the next to that, the king's fourth square, and so on, so that, on the same file, we have king's second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and A squares. Similarly, the square in front of that on which the queen stands at the commencement of the game, is termed the queen's second square, and so on to the A or last square of the file. In the same way, we have king's bishop second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and A squares, and so on, for all the other pieces. In recording the game, the pieces and pawns are designated in print, or in writing, as follows: K for king, Q for queen, kilobytes for king's bishop, KKD for king's knight, KR for king's rook, QB for queen's bishop, QKD for queen's knight, QR for queen's XLVL. The notation. Rook, P for pawn, KP for king's pawn, QP for queen's pawn, KBP for king's bishop's pawn, KKDP for king's knight's pawn, KRP for king's rook's pawn, QBP for queen's bishop's pawn, QKDP for queen's knight's pawn, QRP for queen's rook's pawn. The other abbreviations used in notation are square for square, chapter for check, X for takes, dis, chapter for discovered check, double, chapter for double check, BP for en passant or in passing, JF or better game, at the end for inferior game. It must be remembered that in the English, French, Italian, and Spanish notations, each player counts or reckons the squares from his own side of the board, e.g., the WD height queen's second square is the black queen's seventh square, the white king's square is black king's eighth square, white king's bishop square is black king's bishop's eighth, and so on, i.e., each square of the chessboard has two different denominations, as shown by the subjoined diagram. Diagram number 8. The German algebraic system of notation, however, is quite different and presents many advantages over the one noticed above. The 8 squares of each row, commencing from the left-hand corner of the board, are designated by letters, from the letter A up to the letter H, as illustrated by the diagram on the next page. Commencing from the same corner, the 8 squares of each file are also numbered upward from I to 8, and by a combination of the corresponding letter and figure, each square is differently though quite distinctly marked. In describing a move, the square from which a piece starts, as well as that on which he lands, either in the ordinary way or by capture, is clearly indicated. Thus, White's queen rook square would be marked by the letter and dot figure AI, White's queen rook second square, A2, White's queen rook seventh square, I, White's queen rook eighth square, A8, White's king's fourth square, B4, Black's king's fourth square, 5, etc. The move of pawn to